capitalism and democracy. Democracy is the way of government where the government protects the individual, and capitalism. The French Revolution started in 1789 and ended in 1799. This process helped to democracy because now the French wanted more liberty and wanted to respect the individual rights. This process helped also to the other independence of the American countries.
Hello, my name is Alfredo Milano Vázquez Galaviz, and today I will talk you about some historical events in Asia and Latin America in the 19th century. Now I'm going to talk about historical events in Latin America in the 19th century. It all began with the French Revolution influence in all Latin America, being itself as a role model for some countries that wanted independence by a revolt. The first historical event was the independence of Brazil, and this occurred in the years of 1821 to 1824. This began because the Brazilian people didn't want it to be ruled by Portugal, which by the rule of Portugal in Brazil was named the Brazilian Empire. This ended the 7th of September of 1822, where priest Dom Pedro declared Brazil independent from Portugal, where a formal treaty was signed in autumn of 1825. This helped to the development of democracy because they voted for the ruler and ended an empire. A second important historical event was the rule of Dom Pedro II, because his rule in Brazil helped the growth of the economic system and also he respected the civil rights and freedom of speech. Even though he was a monarch and stayed for 40 years in the power, he was well appreciated by his people. This helped capitalism and democracy because he gave economic stability to his country, and it also helped the contribution to democracy because the people chose him and chose their ruler, and he respected the civil rights and the freedom of speech.
Now we're going to talk about Middle East, and we're going to start with the Ottoman Empire. Russia wanted access to southern parts, and then it invaded the Turkish provinces of Moldavia and Wallachia in 1853. The Ottoman Turks declared war on Russia. Great Britain, France, and Austria sided with the Turks. Russia was defeated in 1856. Russia and Austria became enemies, and the concert of Europe was destroyed. Now, Middle East. In the last years of the 18th century, the decline in the Ottoman Empire power became apparent. Syria came under a breakaway regime, and Iraq was governed as a virtually independent state. Iraq first and now Syria are being brought back under the firm control of the Ottomans. Iran continues to experience weaknesses and instability, and these events happened between 1789 and 1837.
First, in Asia in the 1800s, the Qing dynasty was at the height of its power. No more than a century later, the Qing dynasty collapsed because of the Western powers. Also, by the 1800s, the Europeans had made contact with China, but the Qing dynasty refused this and wanted to limit contact with the outsiders by restricting European merchants to a small trading outlet at Gansu. The first historical event was the Opium War. This event occurred in the years of 1839 to 1842. This event began with a highly addictive drug named opium, and this drug was grown in northern India, sponsored by the British East India Company. The British exported opium to China, and soon China economically went down. China, not happy with the results, they decided to appeal against the British government. However, the British didn't want it to stop selling opium. So dramatically, China blocked its market with the British, but the British responded with the force, creating a war. But the Chinese were no match for the British, and their warships destroyed all the Chinese coastal and river forts. At the end of the war, the Qing dynasty surrendered and made peace with the British. To end the war, they made a Treaty of Nanjing. This treaty was made in the year of 1842, where the Chinese agreed to open 5 coastal ports to the British trade, limit taxes on imported British goods, and pay the cost of the war. The first historical event helped to the contribution of capitalism because at the end of the war, many British goods were entered to China, giving the British many capital by making lots of profit. The second historical event in China was the Taiping Rebellion. This event occurred in the years of 1850 to 1864, and it all started with the failure of the pressing internal economic problems that the Chinese government had to deal with. Hong Xiuquan led this rebellion and claimed to be the young brother of Jesus. Hong was convinced that he was sent from God and that his labor was to finish with the Qing dynasty. However, in March of 1853, the rebels seized Nanjing and massacred 25,000 people, where there were men, women, and children. In 1864, the Chinese forces, with the help of the Europeans, captured the remaining rebels, and around 20 million people died in this civil war that lasted 14 years. This second historical event helped the development of democracy because the citizens of the country wanted to elect their ruler and then with a Qing dynasty.
Today we're going to talk about the Mexican American War. The Mexican American War was a process that started in 1846 and ended in 1848. This process helped capitalism because the United States imperialized Mexico. With this, they gained sources and they started to fight more for industrialization. This is a second process. Industrialization in 1970s started because they needed now more technology in their companies. This led to more economy. One process that helped Europe to have democracy was the unification of kingdoms. One of them was Germany. Germany was governed by Prussia. In 1866, the German people started to revolt against the Prussian government. Now we have Germany in a nationalist idea of being free and being their own country.
Now we're gonna talk about Africa. With the abolition of the slavery in the USA in 1865, the Atlantic slave trade has been dealt a decisive blow and is now in steep decline. However, European nations are beginning to take a more assertive stance towards Africa. France has now colonized the coast of Africa, and both France and Britain have established colonial enclaves on the coast of West Africa. In South Africa, the original Dutch-speaking settlers, the Boer, have founded homelands in the Transvaal and the Orange Free State away from the British-controlled Cape. The discovery of diamonds in the interior, 1867, starts a rush of British settlers into the area and increases tensions between the two European communities.
The second phase of industrialization started in the 1870s. This phase of industrialization was marked by technology. The companies now needed more technology so they can produce more. With this, we have the loss of supply and demand. Then, if you have more supply, there will be more demand. If it's not demand, there will be not supply. With this, the capitalism is very high, but the democracy has not a good level.
The Cape of Southern Africa, already populated by Dutch Boer immigrants, comes under the control of Britain. This serves as a point of expansion for further European settlement of the interior as they seek grazing lands and sources of gold and diamonds throughout the 19th century. Unhappy with British colonial policies, Boer farmers found republics on the Transvaal beyond the scope of British domination. Among the indigenous communities, the development of large centralized chiefdoms by Angoni and Zulu peoples results in the overall militarization of society, and the implementation of far-flung systems of tribute that concentrate and redistribute forms of wealth such as cattle, beads, and metals. This political concentration results in the adoption for foreign traditions, as figurative sculpture originating from northern, the Tsonga-speaking communities into Zulu and Angi material culture. Similar process of the consolidation occur in Madagascar, where a succession of Merina kings places much of the island under Merina control, By the late 19th century, however, both Madagascar and the southern African mainland are incorporated into the French and British colonial empires respectively. This happened in the 19th century.